I felt a shiver run down my spine the moment I spotted her in the front row. My sister. The same woman who, 5 years ago, had stolen the man I was supposed to marry. There she was, smiling politely, her posture impeccable, like nothing had ever happened. I adjusted the silk of my blouse beneath the stage lights, the soft fabric a small comfort against the tight knot of memories in my chest. The audience murmured, their attention half on me, half on the screen behind, but all I could hear was the echo of our last conversation, the betrayal replaying like a scratched record. My phone had buzzed this morning, a cryptic text from her, "See you tonight." I hadn't replied. Didn't need to. I had learned a long time ago that some ghosts don't need confrontation. They need proof. I let my eyes drift to the TED stage, the polished wood gleaming, the microphone poised like a crown I had fought years to earn. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the faint tang of stage lights, grounding me. Every small detail mattered. The clip of my pen, the faint shimmer of my earrings, the way my heels clicked with authority as I walked forward. And yet, under the spotlight, I felt a quiet thrill. She had come to see me rise, to watch the woman she thought she had defeated. But this time, the story wasn't hers, it was mine. And tonight, every heartbeat, every careful word, would remind her of that truth. 5 years ago, I was not the woman standing under these bright lights. I was trembling, vulnerable, and foolishly in love. I remember the late afternoon sun streaming through the apartment window, catching dust in golden shafts that felt almost cruel in their beauty. I had just returned from work, clutching flowers and a nervous smile, ready to tell him, my fiancé, that I was thinking about our future, about us. Instead, I found them together. My sister, laughing with him in that way that used to make my stomach twist with envy, and him, looking at her like she was the center of the universe I had once occupied. My hands shook so violently I dropped the flowers, petals scattered across the hardwood floor like the pieces of my heart. I felt my throat tighten, words refusing to leave my lips. "You're overreacting," he had said later, avoiding my gaze, as if my pain were a petty inconvenience. My sister just smiled, that infuriating, smug smile, and left the room like she owned not only him but my entire world. And in that moment, I realized I had nothing, no partner, no protection, no family support, only the echo of their laughter and the burning sting of betrayal. It was my grandmother who found me curled on the couch, tears soaking the pillow. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't offer false consolation. Instead, she placed a small, worn notebook in my hands, its leather cover cracked, edges softened by years of use. "Write your own story," she whispered. "Not theirs, not anyone else's. Yours. Start now." I clutched that notebook like a lifeline. That night, I decided. I would not crumble. I would not beg or chase love that wasn't mine. I would rebuild, quietly, fiercely, on my own terms. The anger still lingered, yes, but beneath it was something far stronger, a spark of resilience, a hunger for independence. And I knew, even then, that one day, the world would see the woman I was capable of becoming. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. I didn't post inspirational quotes on social media or drop hints to my family. I simply started. That worn notebook from my grandmother became my daily companion, its pages filled with ideas, plans, and later, strategies. Every evening, I pored over articles, watched tutorials, and mapped out a future that didn't exist yet but that I refused to let go of. The first step was terrifying. I enrolled in a course I could barely afford, learning the skills I knew I needed. I stayed up until 3 a.m. some nights, caffeine coursing through me, my eyes bloodshot, my fingers cramped, wondering if I was insane for believing I could start over. The world felt stacked against me, young, female, heartbroken, but I reminded myself of that spark my grandmother had ignited. I wasn't asking for permission anymore. A few months in, I met Mara, a seasoned woman in my field who saw potential I had almost forgotten existed. She didn't coddle me or hand me success on a silver platter. She challenged me, pushed me, made me confront the gaps in my knowledge, the flaws in my ideas, and the doubts that clawed at me every morning. "You're better than your past," she said one evening, sipping herbal tea across from me in a tiny cafe. "But you have to believe it too." I nodded, my throat tight, realizing she was right. The first small victories were exhilarating. My first paying client, a tiny project that barely covered the cost of materials, felt like winning an Olympic medal. Then came the first big break, a contract that could actually sustain me. I still remember the moment I held the signed papers, my hands shaking, a quiet triumph bubbling in my chest. Each success felt like a stitch repairing the wounds of the past, each achievement a whisper to the universe. I am not broken. I kept most of it secret. Family calls were brief. Texts were vague. I didn't want pity, jealousy, or interference. I didn't want them to know how far I had come until I was ready. Social media, once a battlefield of comparison and pain, became a place of curated glimpses, a coffee here, a framed certificate there, never revealing the full extent of my ascent. And slowly, day by day, the woman I had been, hurt, betrayed, uncertain, began to fade into someone sharper, wiser, and quietly unstoppable. The heartbreak that once threatened to define me now fueled a relentless drive to prove, first to myself and eventually to the world, that I could rise higher than I ever imagined. The day finally arrived. My TED Talk was packed, the auditorium buzzing with anticipation. The smell of polished wood mixed with the faint tang of stage lights and the coffee brewed backstage, calming yet thrilling me in equal measure. I adjusted my blazer, feeling the crisp fabric against my skin, and allowed myself a small smile. Tonight was not just about ideas, it was about proof. Proof that the woman they had underestimated, dismissed, or betrayed had grown into someone unshakable. And then I saw her. My sister. Front row. Perfect posture, polite smile, hair pulled back elegantly, the kind of poised confidence I had envied and despised in the past. My heart skipped, a rush of old memories flooding in. The stolen fiancé, whispered lies, the nights spent crying into my pillow, thinking I'd never be whole again. But underneath the ripple of old pain was something else. Anticipation, a quiet thrill. She was about to see me rise. I stepped onto the stage, heels clicking, the microphone adjusting to my height, and the audience went silent. I let my gaze sweep across them, lingering for just a second longer on her. My words flowed, each one carefully measured, imbued with the authenticity and warmth that had earned me this platform. I told my story, not the part about betrayal or stolen love, not in detail, but the part about resilience, reinvention, and seizing one's power. Then came the moment. I paused, letting the quiet swell. Behind me, images appeared. The milestones, the awards, the growing company I had built from nothing. A chart of clients, testimonials, photos of projects that had transformed spaces, lives, and communities. The audience murmured, heads turned, eyes widened. And finally, I dropped it. The truth of my success. My net worth, my company, my ownership. The life I had painstakingly built, quietly, without a single favor, without a hint of showmanship. I watched their faces, my sister's especially. Her polite smile faltered, her jaw tightened, and for the first time in years, I saw doubt, awe, and maybe even regret flicker across her features. My parents, once doubtful, now seemed stunned, their mouths slightly open, as if they couldn't comprehend the woman standing before them. And him, my ex-fiancé, his expression unreadable, a mixture of disbelief and admiration, but too late, painfully late. The room held its collective breath as I shared my vision, my voice steady, the story unfolding with passion and clarity. I could feel the shift, the recognition that I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't the girl whose love had been stolen. I was the woman who had taken her life into her own hands and thrived. As the talk ended and applause thundered around me, I let my eyes find her one last time. I didn't need to speak. The look between us said everything. The past was over, and the power had shifted. I was no longer defined by what she had taken. I was defined by what I had created, by the fire she thought she had extinguished. And tonight, under these bright lights, everyone could see it, especially her. After the applause faded, I lingered on stage a moment longer, letting the realization sink in. This was no longer their story. It was mine. I could see it in their faces. Awe, shock, and a touch of guilt. My sister's carefully composed mask had slipped, and I finally had the space to speak, to set the terms. I invited them backstage, my voice calm but unwavering. The office I had built for myself reflected every hard-won achievement: sleek, modern lines, artwork I had curated, and subtle touches of warmth that reminded me of the person I had once been. I gestured for them to sit, and for the first time in years, I felt fully in control. "I know why you're here," I began, my tone soft but firm. "You came expecting to see someone fragile, someone broken. And yes, I was for a while. But I am no longer that person." My sister flinched slightly. Even her polished demeanor couldn't hide it. "The difference is I decided to rise. And now, if you want to be in my life, truly in it, there are conditions." I laid them out clearly. For my sister, accountability. No more lies, no more undermining, no more using relationships as leverage. She would need to show genuine growth, rebuild trust, and pursue her own path instead of trying to take mine. For my parents, respect and acknowledgement of my independence. No more dismissing my choices, no more assuming I need saving. And for the ex-fiancé, well, he needed nothing from me. His presence was a reminder of what I had overcome, and that was enough. Each condition was tied to growth, to healing. "I am not bitter," I said. "I care about each of you, but I will not bend to patterns that hurt me. If you choose to be part of my life, it will be on terms that honor who I am and what I've built." I let my words linger, feeling their weight sink in. I could see the change beginning, small but unmistakable. My sister's shoulders, once so rigid, softened slightly. My parents' eyes glimmered with understanding, and even he looked away, processing the truth that the woman they had underestimated had become untouchable, not through vengeance, but through her own power. In that moment, I realized something important. Setting boundaries was not punishment. It was love for myself and for them. Compassion without compromise, empathy without sacrifice. I had the upper hand, yes, but it was not about revenge. It was about clarity, respect, and creating space for healthy connections. And as I watched them take it in, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The story had shifted. The past had lost its grip. I was not only victorious, I was free. Weeks passed after the TED Talk, but the shift lingered like a quiet echo in my life. My sister began to change, not overnight, but in small, undeniable ways. She started pursuing her own career goals, attending workshops, and even seeking guidance instead of competing for attention. My parents, once skeptical and dismissive, began asking questions about my work with genuine curiosity, occasionally sending me articles or ideas, trying to understand the life I had built with my own hands. Even he, the ex-fiancé, remained a distant figure, a reminder of the pain I had endured, yet no longer a source of anger. I realized I didn't need closure from him. I had found it within myself. The woman who had been heartbroken, betrayed, and underestimated had grown into someone unshakable. Someone who could love, yes, but first loved herself fiercely. One quiet evening, I opened the worn notebook my grandmother had given me all those years ago. I traced the edges with my fingers, remembering her words, "Write your own story." I smiled softly. The notebook had been my anchor, my mirror, my confidant. Every line I had written, every plan, every small victory, had brought me to this moment, a life I had created, not inherited, not stolen, but built. I poured myself a cup of tea and walked to the window, looking out over the city that now felt like mine in some quiet, intimate way. The skyline shimmered under the evening lights, just as golden and full of possibility as that afternoon when I had first faced heartbreak. I thought of the woman I had been, curled on the couch, shaking and lost, and felt a wave of compassion, not for my past self's weakness, but for her courage in even surviving. And in that stillness, I whispered to no one in particular, but perhaps to everyone who had ever doubted me. I am enough. I am powerful. I am free. The journey hadn't been easy. It had been filled with tears, doubts, and quiet nights of self-reckoning. But it had been mine. And now, every step forward, every smile, every success felt lighter, freer, and infinitely sweeter. I had finally written my story. Not the one anyone else wanted, not the one my sister had tried to steal, but the one I had earned with my own resilience, vision, and heart. And under the soft glow of the evening sky, I knew this truth, clear and unwavering. The woman I was meant to be had always been waiting for me, and now she was unstoppable.